extend a warm welcome to each one of you for this 14th Nirmal Kumar Bose Memorial Lecture, which will be focusing on the theme Contextualizing N.K Bose within the intellectual landscape.
Om Nilachala Nivasaya Nityaya Paramatmane Balabhadra Subhadra Vyam Jagannathaya Te Namaha. I am praying Lord Jagannath on all your behalf to bring peace to the whole world. Let me first begin with a remark by Professor Anil Kumar when he said that I was his guide, I was his mentor and so on and so forth. But then in the 3rd century BC, Chanakya in his Chanakya Niti or Niti Vakya has already said a small couplet that Lalayat Panchavarshani Dasavarshani Tadayat Praptetu Shodase Varse Putram Mitram Vivacharet. Up to the age of 5 years, the child needs pampering. And 10 years after that means from 6 to 15, the child has to be shown the right path, right way, because that is the time when usually children slip away from the norms and they should be told about the norms or values, and that is the real stage of socialization. Praptetu Shodase Varse, when the child attains the age of 16, he or she is no more a child to you, he or she becomes your friend. So that way, Anil, you are my friend now because you have already above the age of 16 and following Chanakya. Now we are friends. No more teacher, no more students. Friends, before I start this 14th N.K Bose Memorial Lecture, I would like to thank IGNCA for giving me this wonderful opportunity of delivering this lecture today. It is an overwhelming experience. But before that, I want to make 2 things very clear, or 2 clarifications. Number 1 is that as per the convention goes, all of you know that these kinds of memorial lectures are usually read out. Of course, Professor Anil Kumar was asking me whether I have a PowerPoint or something. I could have done it, but then going by the convention, I prefer to read it out. A booklet has already been distributed to you. The second clarification I want to give is that this booklet is too big. I think Shalina ji should get one. And this booklet is too big to be read out in a stipulated time. The organizers have given me 40 to 45 minutes time. So therefore, kindly excuse me if I skip over some paragraphs or some pages. But the booklet is with you so that you can have a thorough reading from top to the bottom. Friends, as it was already announced, today is the 125th birth anniversary of N.K Bose, in whose memory this lecture is being organized. And therefore, this is an auspicious day, as far as I am concerned, that I am delivering the lecture today, memorial lecture today, on his birthday, 125th birthday. N.K Bose, students, those who may not be knowing N.K Bose was an exceptional teacher. He was an anthropologist, an architect by his own merit, a human geographer, an archaeologist, a scholar administrator, a patriot, a selfless social worker, and a Gandhian philosopher rolled into one. N.K Bose was also, has a significant contribution to many fields of knowledge because of his interdisciplinary interest. While commencing this memorial lecture, I am reminded of the vivid imagery evoked by Charles Dickens' novel. Many of you must have read. It quotes, I quote, the Charles Dickens novel, A Tale of Two Cities. And the opening lines of this novel says, I quote, "It was the best of times, it was the worst of times." This aptly encapsulates the dualities and complexities of N.K Bose's life and his profound contributions to the Indian intellectual tradition. Dickens' statement reflects a period marked by both suffering and hope, chaos and order, and love and hate, underscored by the French Revolution. This suggests that human experiences are often shaped by extremes and contradictions, particularly during moments of societal upheaval. In a similar vein, N.K. Bose lived through the dual realities of colonial oppression and the fervent nationalist revolutionary movement. This socio-political milieu undoubtedly played a pivotal role in shaping his personality and influencing his creative and intellectual pursuits. Before immersing ourselves in the profound academic and socio-political contributions of the visionary N.K. Bose, it is only fitting to honor the legacy of the 13 distinguished scholars who have already delivered the N.K. Bose Memorial Lectures at this venue at IGNCA since its inception in 1993. Beginning with the first lecture was delivered by none other than Professor Surajit Chandra Sinha. Among these luminaries, 3 of my esteemed colleagues are included, and one of them is chairing this session. Among these luminaries, my esteemed colleagues, Professor Abhijit Guha delivered it in 2022, Professor P.C. Joshi in 2023, and Professor P. Venkata Rao in 2024. They have already illuminated the multifaceted brilliance of Bose's enduring legacy. Years before their contributions, my revered guru, Professor L.K. Mahapatra, had the privilege of delivering the 6th N.K. Bose Memorial Lecture in 2016, a moment that resonates deeply with me. To these scholars, I owe a debt of gratitude, for their work has been a beacon of inspiration, guiding me to undertake this honored responsibility today. Joshi ji, I am really grateful to you. I need not remind this distinguished audience that N.K. Bose occupies a place of preeminent significance in the intellectual history of India. Honored by many intellectuals, scholars, and Gandhians across the globe, he stands as a towering figure who has contributed remarkably to various disciplines. Therefore, my heartfelt appreciation extends to the Indira Gandhi National Centre for the Arts, New Delhi, whose enduring commitment has preserved this noble tradition, ensuring that this lecture series remains a living testament to the timeless relevance of N.K. Bose contributions. Bose's writings essentially reveal 2 central preoccupations, one theoretical, the other methodological. Throughout his vast body of work, written both in Bengali and English, he endeavored to bring out the essence of Indian civilization by exploring the viewpoints of diverse social groups like tribes, castes, peasants, and urban dwellers alike. At the heart of his intellectual pursuits, Bose adopted a civilizational approach for understanding Indian society. He argued for a holistic comprehension of human behavior deeply rooted in the historical processes that shape civilizations. He advocated for an ethnographic method combined with Indological and historical approaches to understand the intricacies and complexities of Indian civilization. A close confidant of Mahatma Gandhi, Bose's work was imbued with the twin ideals of nationalism and humanism, qualities that resonate throughout his writings. This lecture is divided into 6 different sections. The first section is about brief biography. I will not take too much of your time in reading out the biography. Suffice to say that Nirmal Kumar Bose was born today on the January 2nd in 1901 in Calcutta. He belonged to the illustrious Bengali Bhadralok tradition of his time, a milieu that also produced prodigious luminaries like renowned physicist S.N. Bose and the iconic nationalist leader like Netaji Subhash Chandra Bose. In 1921, after his school education in 3 different states, in Bihar, in Jharkhand, and in Bengal, in 1922, he enrolled as an MSc student at the University of Calcutta, driven by a strong interest in geological research, but left the university to participate in the non-cooperation movement led by Mahatma Gandhi in 1922. He made this bold decision, putting his principles over his academic pursuits. Then he relocated himself to Puri in Odisha as a travel guide, because usually Puri is a place of tourist attraction, and many of the tourists, I would say large chunk of tourists, come from Bengal. He was working as a kind of guide, tourist guide to the Bengali visitors to Puri. Accidentally, that time the Vice Chancellor of Calcutta University, Sir Ashutosh Mukherjee, met him in Puri, and then he was impressed by his brilliance and requested him to come back to the university, and accordingly N.K Bose again went back to the University of Calcutta and joined in the MSc program in anthropology. In 1925, Bose successfully completed his MSc in anthropology at Calcutta University, earning laurels for his exceptional academic prowess and setting the stage for an impressive journey in this field. Nirmal Kumar Bose's academic journey began in 1937, when he was appointed as an assistant lecturer in the Department of Prehistoric Archaeology at Calcutta University. Over the years, he rose through the ranks, serving as both lecturer and reader in the fields of anthropology and human geography. His scholarly pursuits took him beyond India's borders, facilitating his visit to many esteemed universities across the globe. Among these were the University of California, Berkeley, the University of Chicago, the University of Wisconsin, the University of Michigan, Columbia University, the University of North Carolina, Howard University in Washington, D.C., and Hiroshima University in Japan. In January 1959, Nirmal Kumar Bose assumed the office of Director of the Anthropological Survey of India, an esteemed position within the Department of Anthropology under Government of India. He held this influential post until 1964. He guided the institution with vision and dedication during his tenure as the Director of Anthropological Survey of India. From 1967 to 1970, N.K Bose held the high-profile office of Commissioner for Scheduled Castes and Scheduled Tribes in the Government of India. The second section of this lecture is about his participation in the freedom movement and become a disciple of Gandhi. As I have previously mentioned, in 1921, Bose made the resolute decision to forsake his formal education, placing his ideological convictions above his academic pursuits. Driven by an unshakable determination, he abandoned college to plunge himself in the Indian freedom movement under the sublime leadership of Mahatma Gandhi. Quite evidently, during his formative years as a young student, Bose's ideals and persona were profoundly shaped by Gandhi's philosophy, which captivated his intellect and heart. I am not going into the details. Now I am coming to the page 12 of the booklet. Second paragraph, while Gandhi's influence on Bose was undeniably profound, it did not lead him down the path of complete atheism. Instead, Bose chose to define himself as a relentless advocate of truth, a seeker who revered honesty above all dogma. This position taken by Bose invites a thoughtful critique of Sinha's portrayal of him as a, quote, leading anthropologist and outstanding exponent of Gandhism, a rare example of versatile creativity and a nationalist, unquote. Rajmohan Gandhi has branded him as a left-leaning anthropologist, quote unquote. Bose's active participation in an Indian freedom movement, coupled with his extensive travels through rural India alongside Gandhi, led to frequent interruptions in both his education and academic duties at Calcutta University. His firm commitment to the cause resulted in his imprisonment twice for protesting against the British regime of that time. First time between 1931 and 32, and later from 1942 to 45. However, despite disruptions in his studies, Bose's deep engagement in the freedom struggle and his dedication to social service resulted in 5 invaluable works, such as Selections from Gandhi, published in 1934, Paribrajaker Diary, written in Bengali in 1945, Studies in Gandhism, published in 1946, My Days with Gandhi, published in 1953, and Gandhiji, The Man and His Mission in 1966. I'll come to the second paragraph of page 13. Gandhi's influence on Bose's personality was so intense that he had a strong reservation about violence of any kind. Bhattacharjee quotes, Instead, Gandhi's idea of attaining freedom through non-violence and peaceful means held much more promise for him. That was the beginning of a lifelong belief and commitment to Gandhian values and principles, unquote. Moreover, his anthropological knowledge informed his participation in grassroots initiatives addressing issues like tribal rights and integration into the broader Indian society. The third section of this lecture is about his scholarly contribution to various branches of social sciences. I have listed only three, but probably I can't read out all three. First is his contribution to Indian archaeology. Then his contribution to Indian anthropology. And the third is his contribution to nationalism in India. First of all, we'll see how he contributed to archaeology. In examining the scholarly legacy of N.K. Bose, one discovers a harmonious tapestry woven from diverse disciplines and perspectives. Yet, he never wavered in asserting his own convictions in the end. The 19th century intellectual renaissance in Bengal sowed the seeds for a profound revival, and N.K. Bose emerged as a beneficiary of this vast, all-encompassing pursuit of knowledge, his mind shaped by its wide embrace of wisdom and inquiry. This has resulted in his multifaceted academic interest and writings. This has been observed by D.K. Bhattacharya, who was our colleague at the University, Department of Anthropology, by noting that Bhattacharya says, I quote, Bose was as much interested in quaternary geology as in temple architecture, as well as culture change or social philosophies of our civilization. Today, in the age of super specialization, probably such wide-based research interest will be looked at with covert disdain. At the same time, there are scholars who emphasize the need of demystifying the path to knowledge about both the organic and material world, unquote. Nevertheless, as aptly remarked by Andre Bete, Bose, I quote, thought himself as first and foremost an anthropologist, even though he found himself out of tune with the current concerns of his professional colleagues, unquote. Now I will jump to page 15, second paragraph. In August 1935, Nirmal Kumar Bose published an insightful article titled The Temple of Konark. This was not written as a Konark, it is written Konark. In the Vishwabharati quarterly of August 1935. His profound understanding of Indian temple architecture shines through in his description of temple's intricate architectural style. Yet, Bose delves deeper, celebrating the collective spirit that defined the architects of that era, a spirit rooted in continuity, in community pride rather than personal acclaim. He observes, I quote N.K. Bose, the temple of Konark then is not the creation of a freak of genius, but is rather the creation of an age and entire society which felt unified in spirit as well as in activity. And that is perhaps the reason why no architect has left his name to be associated with the building of the temple. Perhaps he felt that the temple was the artistic expression of a great age to which he himself belonged, so that he preferred to remain submerged in the society which had given the birth to that age, unquote. I have also noticed that many kings of those days in the 9th, 10th, 11th centuries, when they were building or when they were constructing temples for the gods and goddesses, they were never leaving their names. And there are many stories, many legends about it. The reason was, one of the kings has said, I don't want, when the god said, why don't you put your name? He said, I don't want to put my name because tomorrow my son, grandson or great-grandson may claim that it is our temple which was erected by or which was built by my forefathers. So better I remain as childless so that nobody can claim. So this was the kind of magnanimity. Bose has exactly revealed the same kind of thing with reference to Konark's architects. The approach of N.K. Bose in understanding Indian temple architecture was more of a scientist, highlighting temple as a structure. Now we are pondering what a structure is. Anthropology students know how Levi-Strauss defines structure. But at that time he was saying, when Levi-Strauss was nowhere in the scene, N.K. Bose had with the vision of the concept of a structure. structure in relation to the thoughts of the people of the region. In his N.K. Bose Memorial Lecture in 1998, M.A. Dhaki, here, a distinguished scholar in temple architecture, had noted when he delivered the lecture here, I quote him, "Towards temple architecture, N.K. Bose's own outlook was fundamentally of a scientist who endeavored to study the ancient or medieval temple as a structure in a logical and hence in a systematic manner, and in relation to the ideas, thoughts, angles of the people of the past, in sum, the traditional builders themselves who shaped them," unquote. So therefore, the vision of scientific temper was already there in N.K. Bose's mind. Simultaneously, Bose laid his hand in prehistoric archaeology and published with Professor Dharani Sen a monumental work titled Excavations of Mayurbhanj. That was published in 1948. This was published by Calcutta University itself. The study included the discovery of the Paleolithic site of Kuliana, of which I think Professor Basa is more familiar, and with his geographical and geological observations, then observations with the river Budha-Balang, cases of natural flaking at Kamarpal, excavation, classification, and description of tools found in situ, statistical study of tools not found in situ, and so on and so forth. Of that time in 1948, it was a monumental work in Odissan prehistoric archaeology. Now I will come to his contributions to anthropology. As a student of anthropology, Bose, I quote, drew inspiration from Diwan Bahadur, L.K. Anantakrishna Iyer, and Rai Bahadur Sarat Chandra Roy. As a researcher in anthropology, Bose showed inclination towards the American school of diffusionism, where trade distribution studies and chronological implication of distribution of culture traits, as postulated by Kroeber and Whistler, fascinated him. Bose developed this approach in his studies on Spring Festival, elements of temple architecture, and basic material traits in rural India, unquote. Bose's anthropological and sociological work was deeply influenced by the Western interpretation of Indian society and culture, yet he attempted Indianization of concepts and ideas wherever needed. As with many Indian scholars of his era, he faced the challenge of navigating a colonial framework that often imposed Western paradigms on Indian anthropology. These colonial perspectives frequently portrayed Indian society as unchanging, primitive, and regressive, a view that Bose rejected, advocating instead for a perspective rooted in the indigenous context. Concurrently, his scholarship was shaped by the emerging post-colonial states' efforts to articulate a cohesive Indian identity and cultural ethos. Bose played a pivotal role in developing an Indian anthropology that not only contested colonial narratives but also adapted to the evolving realities of a newly independent nation. The originality of Bose's scholarship revealed itself early in his academic journey with his Cultural Anthropology, the textbook which is now available, Cultural Anthropology, published in 1929, standing as a testament to his intellectual brilliance. In this seminal work, Bose sought to bridge the chasm between traditional ethnography and a distinctly Indian perspective on culture. Viewing Indian culture through an indigenous lens, he celebrated its adaptability and profound historical depth, challenging the reductive and essentialist interpretations often propagated by Western scholars. As a student, Bose was profoundly influenced by the principles of functionalism. This influence is evident in his definition of culture, which he rooted in the satisfaction of basic human needs, though through socially sanctioned practices. To Bose, culture was not a fragmented entity, but a cohesive and intricate whole composed of interwoven elements. He used his own, the Sanskrit terminologies like this: material tools or vastu, habitual actions or kriya, social organization or sanghati, and abstract ideas or tattva. Frequently, he was referring to the Vedas, Upanishads, and Puranas in order to get this idea. Together, these elements formed a dynamic and integrated framework that enabled individuals to thrive within a society. What Malinowski was thinking in Britain or in Europe, N.K. Bose was exactly thinking in the same line in India. Bose's rigorous training in anthropology at Calcutta University inspired him to delve deeply into the ethnographic study of India's tribal communities. He authored one of his most significant yet contentious essays, The Hindu Method of Tribal Absorption, in 1941. Anthropology students must be very well aware of this concept of Hindu methods of tribal absorption, which became both widely read and fervently debated. In this essay, Bose explored the assimilation of 𝐁𝐸𝐽. 𝐁𝐸𝐽 is a primitive tribal group in Odisha. Tribal practices into Hindu rituals and ceremonies, a phenomenon influenced by their geographical and cultural proximity to neighboring Hindu communities. Bose observed, I quote him, "One very important thing emerged from all that. A very important part is played by economic matters, even in the sphere of social and cultural relations. Culture, as we have already indicated, flows from a politically and economically dominant group to a subservient one. In social matters too, the former occupies a higher status in contrast to the later." Unquote. Remarkably, Bose's observations in 1941 prefigured the celebrated sociological theory of Sanskritization articulated by none other than Professor M.N. Srinivas in his monumental work, Religion and Society Among the Quirks of South India. This theoretical parallel highlights Bose's foresight in examining the dynamics of cultural integration and transformation within Indian society. Bose's essay exploring the symbiotic relationship between tribal communities and their neighboring Hindu societies, emphasizing mutual economic benefits, garnered commendation from scholars, many scholars like Andre Bete, L.K. Mahapatra and others. However, Munshi was sharply critical of both Bose and Srinivas. He articulated his disapproval, stating, I quote Surendra Munshi, "My more serious criticism against Bose and Srinivas is that, lacking a general sociological theory of society and social change within the framework of which empirical data are to be collected, interpreted and transcended, they end up with the transformation of the object of study into a theory that has conditioned the study itself. In other words, in their concern with the ideal sphere, they are compelled to accept the ruling ideas of the society, past and present, for providing them with the interpretation of the corresponding empirical reality studied by them. In sum, their analysis is ideological." Unquote. I have been fortunate to work closely with the same tribal community, much later of course, the 𝐁𝐸𝐽 of Odisha and various other communities across India. Drawing from my own research, I would like to propose that in the tapestry of Indian society, tribe and caste are not rigidly defined or mutually exclusive domains. Though they occupy distinct social spaces, these entities have engaged in complex socio-economic exchanges for millennia. Within the lexicon of social sciences, tribe and caste are framed as separate archetypes, serving as tools for analytical clarity. Yet, it is universally acknowledged that tribal culture forms a vital strand of the little tradition within Indian civilization, with its vibrant heritage shaping the grandeur of this enduring cultural mosaic. Tribe and caste do not merely coexist. They influence one another profoundly and together weave connections with the great tradition of India. With special reference to tribal Odisha, in one of the earlier papers I have observed, I quote, "My prime intention of bringing together all these models is precisely to show that like other cultural regions of India, Odisha also has been experiencing mutual exchange and adoption of cultural elements between the tribal and caste communities since historical times, to give the tribal, rural, urban continuum a firm base, in spite of the strongly held closed character of the Indian caste system." Unquote. Thus, I argued at the time that the interaction between tribes and caste in rural India was not a straightforward, one-way flow of culture from the economically dominant to the subordinate groups, but rather a complex, winding process in which influences moved in multiple directions. My teacher N.K Bose and myself have used the twin concepts of quote-unquote encysted castes and again quote-unquote encysted tribes to explain this complex process of cultural flow between tribes and caste living in close proximity. The British colonial policy of isolating tribes and their deliberate partitioning of India's social fabric into distinct tribal and caste-based universes failed to sever the deeper ties that bind. tribes have long shared in the expansive spectrum of Indian civilization, albeit to varying extents, shaped by differences in settlement patterns, economic structures, and linguistic expressions. The notion of the caste system as unchanging and monolithic is a simplistic misrepresentation, as evidenced by the dynamic cultural exchanges between the tribes and castes in Odisha. Indeed, the contribution of tribal communities to Odisha's composite culture and spiritual ethos warrant equal prominence in contemporary discussions of Odia language, history, and identity. These cultures, integral to the region's collective heritage, deserve to be celebrated alongside the castes that also shape the vibrant narrative of Odisha. To my mind, Bose's theory was groundbreaking for the era in which it was published, offering a sophisticated insight into the interplay between tribal and non-tribal traditions in India. It was far from being a mere romanticized portrayal of contemporary tribal ethnography. Now I will come to page 21, third paragraph. Between August 1942 and August 1945, this also I have already pointed out, while imprisoned as a political detainee in the Damdam Central Jail, Bose delivered a series of thought-provoking lectures to his fellow inmates. These lectures later formed the foundation for the Bengali edition of his seminal work, Hindu Samajher Godhan, originally published in 1949 and translated into English by Andre Bete as The Structure of Indian Society in 1971, which continues to be celebrated as one of the finest anthropological contributions of its era. I think it is a part of our textbook also for anthropology program. This book embodies Bose's profound civilizational perspective, offering a nuanced lens through which the intricacies of Indian society are understood. The work presents a remarkable synthesis of ethnographic, Indological, and historical perspectives to unravel the complexities of Indian society. Its approach is notably eclectic, transcending the conventional confines of anthropology and embracing a broader interdisciplinary framework. Page 22, last paragraph. Bose envisioned civilization as a testimony to the profound unity that underpins Indian civilization, a unity that thrives amidst vast and intricate diversities. This harmony, he believed, emerged from dynamic interplay between its grand and humble traditions, nurturing a rich tapestry of cultural pluralism. Reflecting on the state of the world, he proclaimed that the time has come to seek unity and brotherhood among cultures, not by erasing their distinctiveness, but through a harmonious process that allows each culture to cherish its unique ways of life and thought, while forging fraternal bonds with other communities striving towards shared aspirations. Page 23, second paragraph. Bose's anthropological vision appears to have gained greater depth during his tenure as a Director of Anthropological Survey of India. Within the Cultural Anthropology Division, he prioritized diverse areas of study such as mapping the distribution of material traits, examining crafts like pottery and metalwork, analyzing the social organization of craft specialists, and investigating places of worship like temples and monasteries. He also focused on themes such as kingship, the impact of modernization on caste and occupation, and the dynamics of social movements. Among the many studies inspired by this vision, I am familiar with two significant works by my mentors, Professor N.K. Behura's book, The Peasant Potters of Odisha, a sociological study, published in 1978, and another by Professor Baidyanath Saraswati, Pottery Making Cultures and Indian Civilization, again published in the same year, 1978. Both of whom were associated with the Anthropological Survey of India during their careers and were deeply influenced by N.K. Bose. N.K. Bose's contribution to the study of the Indian peasantry are immense and significant. While Abhijit Guha acknowledges the value of Bose's work on Indian peasants, he also critiques admirers such as Surajit Sinha and Andre Bete for overlooking the contradictions within Bose's own character. Despite this, Guha expresses a deep respect for Bose's pioneering study of rural India and its complexities. Guha writes, I quote him, just after joining the Anthropological Survey of India in 1959 as director, Bose involved all researchers in a mega project to collect data on the socio-economic and cultural aspects of villages covering 311 districts of India out of total of 322 of that time. And the results of this survey was published in a volume entitled Peasant Life in India, a study in Indian unity and diversity in 1961. I believe this is a precursor to Kumar Suresh Singh's ambitious project on people of India. For Bose, anthropology was not merely an academic pursuit. Next paragraph. For Bose, anthropology was not merely an academic pursuit, but an exquisite journey into the heart of human society. A field science in its truest sense. He envisioned himself as a wanderer scholar, a paribrajak in Bengali, also in Sanskrit, paribrajak, traversing the vast and varied landscapes of India in search of social realities. Fieldwork for him was not just a method, but a way of life, reflecting his insatiable curiosity about the diverse ways of life that defined Indian communities. Bose's anthropological training deepened his belief that no matter the focus, be it anthropological, archaeological, or geographical, a rigorous engagement with the field was bound to illuminate deeper truths. Throughout his illustrious career, he upheld fieldwork as the cornerstone of authentic understanding, a practice that provided unparalleled insights into human culture and society. The influence of pioneering field workers like L.K. Ananthakrishna Iyer, who was his teacher also at Calcutta University, and Sarath Chandra Roy was evident in Bose's devotion to this approach. Their legacy inspired in him an enduring obsession with the art and science of fieldwork, shaping his scholarship into one deeply rooted in the lived realities of the people he studied. The third part of this his contribution is to Indian nationalism. Gandhi's commitment to inclusive nationalism, which celebrated India's diversity while fostering cultural unity, found a clear reflection in N.K. Bose's work. Furthermore, Bose's advocacy for recognizing and addressing the needs of marginalized communities aligned with Gandhi's vision of empowering the nation's most impoverished as the bedrock of Indian nationalism. While reviewing Gandhi's influence on Bose, Surendra Sinha writes, I quote him, Bose's intellectual involvement with Gandhism passed through three phases. He first made an exceptionally thorough classification of total range of Gandhi's ideas in terms of clusters and themes. Next, he attempted a critical analysis of Gandhi's economic and political ideas and action programs. And finally, when Bose accompanied Gandhiji as his personal secretary to Noakhali in 1946 and 47. Unquote. Recounting Gandhi's influence on N.K. Bose, Bakshi writes that Bose, I quote him, may be considered as a Gandhian anthropologist. He also recounts Bose's activities in Harijan slums inhabited by so-called untouchable caste groups like Mochi, those who are cobblers, Hadi, those who are traditional scavengers, and Bauri, those who were landless agricultural laborers and daily wagers. In a notable article published in the Bulletin of the Anthropological Survey of India in 1962, N.K. Bose briefly addressed several challenges and potential solutions to national integration, though he did not explicitly discuss the role and responsibilities of anthropologists in this endeavor. In the concluding section of the article, he proposed the Gandhian formula, quote unquote, of decentralization through local governments as the ideal means to counter provincialism and various forms of sectarianism, offering a vision for achieving true national unity. The next paragraph. It is beyond doubt that Gandhi's influence on Bose went much beyond his political ideology. It shaped his entire worldview, including his anthropology. Gandhi's commitment to the upliftment of marginalized communities, his emphasis on rural development, and his critique of the caste system resonated deeply with Bose's own scholarly and personal pursuits. The fourth section of this lecture is about N.K. Bose and the landscape of contemporary Indian thought. I have selected among all his contemporaries 4 great scholars: Ambedkar, B.R. Ambedkar, Louis Dumeau, although he was a French, but then his contribution to Indian anthropology is immense, all of us know, Professor G.S. Ghurye, and Professor Dhurjate Prasad Mukherjee. But then, because of lack of time, I shall only discuss his similarity and differences with B.R. Ambedkar. During the time when N.K. Bose was actively engaged in both academic pursuits and social work, a number of Indian scholars, much like him, were striving to liberate Indian scholarship from the lingering shadows of colonial influence. They sought to infuse the intellectual landscape with distinctly Indian perspectives and sensibilities. While this brief essay cannot encompass all of Bose's contemporaries or delve into a detailed comparison of their views, it will attempt to offer a broader perspective on the intellectual currents of that time. One of N.K. Bose's distinguished contemporaries was Babasaheb Ambedkar, a towering figure in India's intellectual and social reforms movement. Few may be aware that Ambedkar was introduced to anthropology during his time at Columbia University in the United States around 1915, under the tutelage of a great anthropologist by name Alexander Goldenweiser. Many of our students are reading his books now. Alexander Goldenweiser, a protege of the legendary Franz Boas, the father of American anthropology, or anthropology in general, world anthropology. Immersed in the prevailing anthropological theories and methodologies of the era, Ambedkar demonstrated remarkable originality in his scholarly pursuits. In May 1916, as part of a general ethnology course led by Goldenweiser, Ambedkar authored a groundbreaking term paper, and the title of the term paper was Castes in India, Their Mechanism, Genesis and Development. In his seminal work, he boldly challenged the racial theory of caste origins. That was very popular at that time. Racial theory was very popular. He challenged the racial theory of caste origin promulgated by colonial ethnographers. Furthermore, he critiqued the sociological explanation that caste hierarchy stemmed from notions of relative purity and pollution. Instead, Ambedkar posited a radical alternative, that caste was fundamentally a mechanism to regulate women's sexuality, enforced through the practice of endogamy. Though N.K. Bose and B.R. Ambedkar pursued distinct paths, one rooted in anthropology and the other in the pursuit of social justice, they shared a profound commitment to confronting social inequities and uplifting marginalized communities of India. Both envisioned education, policy reform, and empowerment as vital instruments for cultivating a more equitable and inclusive society. With the permission of the chair, I am omitting the other contributions like Dumo's contribution and Ghurye's, D.P. Mukherjee's, and their similarities or differences between N.K. Bose and their ideas. The fifth section of this lecture is his resonance in modern Indian scholarship, or his relevance in modern Indian scholarship. At this point, it seems redundant to reiterate that the breadth of N.K. Bose's scholarship, which spanned numerous fields of knowledge, even though he considered himself above all an anthropologist. As Bethe aptly notes, I quote, Nirmal Bose thought of himself as first and foremost an anthropologist. It meant fieldwork, seeing society as it actually worked, sharing the experiences of people, comparing different experiences and discovering the principles by which they were governed. Bose never hesitated to pursue intellectual problems into unfamiliar domains, but almost always it was some direct observations or experience which provided the inspiration for his intellectual pursuits, unquote. Now I will come to page 31, second paragraph. I have previously discussed N.K. Bose's application of the civilizational approach to understand Indian society. To briefly revisit his central ideas, Bose employed a combination of ethnographic, Indological, and social historical methods to unravel the intricate tapestry of Indian culture and civilization. His seminal work, The Structure of Hindu Society, stands as 1976 mentioned because it is the reprint of 1975 work, stands as a testament to this civilizational perspective. The book is structured in three distinct sections: a detailed ethnography of the tribes in Odisha and Jharkhand, an exploration of the Indological and textual foundations of Indian culture, and a historical analysis of castes and their evolution. I am not going into the details. I will come to page 32, second paragraph. N.K. Bose was both a scholar of profound theoretical insights and sensible practitioner of applied anthropology. His extensive ethnographic expertise found particular resonance in the realm of tribal welfare. In his observation, he wrote, I quote him, "In the hills of Odisha, there exists a tribe known as Khadiyas and another called the monkey-eating coals or birhors. These tribes sustain themselves by gathering honey and wax or by crafting ropes, which they trade with nearby agricultural communities. Fearless of the jungle, they live within it, their lives intricately woven into its rhythms. Trained from an early age to navigate its vastness, they can survive even when wandering for days in its depths. India's vast forests require vigilant caretakers, yet why should we not consider utilizing the unique skills of birhors and khadiyas?" He is questioning. Instead of forcing them into the confines of settled agricultural life, because those days, even now also, the government has been trying to bring them to agriculture, to the fold of agriculture. So at that time he thought that why should we not consider utilizing the unique skills of birhors and khadiyas? Instead of forcing them into confines of settled agricultural life, why not recruit these forest dwellers, people who have an intrinsic bond with the wilderness, as foresters, to tend to the forest they know so well, unquote. Long before the study of indigenous knowledge, now it has become very popular, indigenous knowledge or Indian knowledge system. Now it is rephrased as Indian knowledge system, and this is a flagship program of the present government, I believe. Indian knowledge system became a critical aspect of modern pedagogy. Bose was already contemplating the value of such wisdom in the 1950s, long back. I'll come to the conclusion, the sixth part. As I noted at the outset, N.K. Bose was born and made his scholarly contributions at a pivotal moment in Indian history, a time that could be described as both the best and the worst, which I started with this quotation. He observed the complexities of India's socio-cultural fabric under colonial rule, while also recognizing the profound need to understand and address these realities on the ground. This dual awareness became a clarion call, inspiring his academic engagement across diverse fields, ranging from archaeology, anthropology, and Indology to history and Gandhian philosophy. Today, when India's new educational policy is gearing towards intense interdisciplinarity in higher education through CBCS, this has become a buzzword, choice-based credit system. Bose had envisioned and practiced this concept itself half a century ago, but as a lone soldier. Bose was an inductivist and was formulating his hypotheses or theories from deep ethnographic insight that he was acquiring from the field. Even when he was holding the high offices of the Director of Anthropological Survey of India and the Commissioner of Scheduled Caste and Scheduled Tribes, he demonstrated his love for the people of India by constantly visiting different pockets of the country. Dr. R.S. Negi, who was my predecessor at Indira Gandhi National Centre, and his worthy daughter is sitting here. He had given delivered his 7th memorial lecture, and he has noted a very interesting thing. In the Negi, in his 7th N.K. Bose Memorial Lecture in 2013, has mentioned in different pockets of this tribal demonstrated region, when Bose has mentioned an interesting anecdote of Bose's visit to Buster to spend 8 days in different pockets of this tribal dominated region, when Bose was the director of ASI. Sinha therefore writes that Bose had, I quote, his interactions with people from all walks of life in the villages and cities, and his great interest in sharing his thoughts with younger scholars. He was a perpetual worker, a perpetual learner, and a teacher, unquote. In fact, Dr. Negi has beautifully described his personality. In some places, perhaps Dr. Negi was not very happy with the way N.K. Bose was working, but he was also full of admiration to N.K. Bose when he spent 8 days. Which director spends 8 days in tribal areas? Which director of Anthropological Survey today spends 8 days with the tribals? I think that is a rare example. Like all other distinguished scholars in different domains of knowledge, Nirmal Kumar Bose has garnered both admiration and critique from many scholars, as it always happens. Every person is, a bundle of goods and bads. So therefore, there are many criticisms against him. admiration and critique from many scholars, including his own students. However, as Bhattacharya has aptly concluded, I quote, "A personality like Bose usually only yielded to reason and truth, and therefore his renderings may come across as orthodox and rigid. While his detractors resent the fearlessness and sense of independence he had, his admirers hold him in high esteem exactly for such qualities. Such debates are inconsequential. In fact, they are inconsequential, for it is more fruitful to study his life by accepting him for what he was, rather than, as Friedrich Nietzsche said, confound him with what he was not," unquote. Finally, again, I'll fail in my duties if I conclude this lecture without expressing my deep felt gratitude to Dr. Sachidanda Joshi ji, Member Secretary of the IGNCA. Unfortunately, because of personal reasons, he is not available today, for giving me the honor to deliver the 14th N.K Bose Memorial Lecture. I am grateful to Professor P.C. Joshi for chairing this session. Additionally, I appreciate Professor K. Anil Kumar, head of the Janpada Sampada Division, and my friend, for his outstanding organizational abilities in arranging this significant lecture. Ladies and gentlemen, no discourse ends without a Shanti Path. Peace to everybody. Now the world needs that most. And from Brihad Aranyaka Upanishad, I am reminding you one shloka. Asato mang sadgamayo. We always render this in our schools. Asato mang sadgamayo, tamaso mang jyotirgamayo, mrityur mang amrito gamayo, sarveshang swastir bhavatu, sarveshang purnam bhavatu, sarvesham mangalam bhavatu, loka samasta sukhino bhavantu. Om Shanti, Shanti, Shanti. Peace to all. Thank you so much.
I must share with you that last year we had World Anthropological Congress at Bhubaneswar, and I happened to be the chairman of the WACNAC, that is World Anthropology Congress National Academic Advisory Committee, and we were supposed to take a decision who will give the keynote address for the World Congress, and undoubtedly it was unanimously agreed by all of us that it has to be Professor K.K. Misra. So that speaks about his abilities, that speaks about his reach. And today, in fact, his lecture was eye-opener. It was on one of the most, I would say, celebrated anthropologists who worked very closely with Mahatma Gandhi. I think I remember two people who were very closely influenced and worked with Gandhi. One, of course, was Warrior Elvin, who in fact went to Sabarmati Ashram and stayed with Gandhi for a very long time. And in fact, he wanted to work among the Harijans. And then Sardar Patel suggested to him, "Why you are working on Harijans? So many people are already working. Why don't you work on the tribes?" So he went to Madhya Pradesh, or central province at that time, and worked the tribe. And second, of course, N.K. Bose. N.K. Bose was not only very closely influenced by Gandhi, but also he was almost like Gandhi's collaborator. And especially he was interpreter to Gandhi when Gandhi went to Noakhali. The famous, riots that were taking place. And I think there was this anthropologist and the critical anthropologist which was there in N.K. Bose. So he did not totally agree with Gandhi. In fact, if I remember correctly, he did not appreciate his experiments with truth to a great extent, and he was quite critical about it. But then, as an anthropologist, he was somebody who would say the truth, and that is what anthropologists are known for. But I think one of his agenda that was very close to his heart, which is in fact has re-emerged as the agenda of anthropologists today. That is what is very remarkable. One is Indianization of Indian anthropology. And of course, I really would like, there are many young people sitting here, his ideas, you talked of Vastu, you talked of Kriyas and all. Let us try to understand Indian society through these terms also, which are indigenous terms. So let us give rise. But second, I think most important was decolonization. And in fact, my friend Dr. Anil Kumar is now organizing a session in the forthcoming INCA Congress on decolonization. And I think he was somebody who was truly influenced by Gandhi's idea of Swadeshi, and he wanted anthropology to be delinked from this colonial influence, where I think he agreed to some extent with Ambedkar as well, who denounced the racial theory for caste. And he was somebody who, in fact, gave this great idea of Hindu method of tribal absorption, and how closely the tribes and the caste, they interact. They have been interacting, and they interact with each other. And it is not something which is a distant, isolated others that was perhaps a colonial agenda. And I have said at one place that agenda was that they wanted to take over all the precious resources which were actually in the tribal areas, like the teak wood and all kinds of minerals and things that were there in the tribal areas, and therefore they had that kind of exclusion, partial exclusion, and areas which they demarcated as nobody will interfere. So these are the kind of things that are there. Now, he, as he rightly said, N.K. Bose was also a very versatile intellectual. In fact, he was one of those, I think, rare anthropologists who tried to speak about Indian civilization. And not many people, not many people have written that. Not many people have given thought. And I would really urge now the contemporary scholars to think about India as a civilization, taking cue from N.K. Bose and taking it further. That would be a great thing, I remember on this civilizational thing, Malik was there, S.C. Malik was there, who was part of, I think, IGNCA for some time. He had written on Indian civilization. Apart from, I'm not talking about Chicago scholars, but in India, not many people have talked about it. Not many people have given a thought to it. But it's time when we should think about Indian civilization, because right now, when we are talking of decolonization, we should also think of this civilization and the heritage that we have, the continuity of tradition that is there in India from time immemorial. So this is something which I think I would urge this new generation scholars to take up further. Then I think he's one of the only anthropologists who work on what can be called as architectural anthropology. So and that I think he very rightly said that he was in Puri and then Konarka. Perhaps he was, as a guide, he was very deeply, I think, involved in explaining things, and he must have learned architecture also there. So that is again a very, very interesting contribution that was made by him. Now, he also mentioned about R.S. Negi, meeting him, and I think R.S. Negi mentions at one time that he came to receive him at the railway station somewhere, and then he was having a khaki dress with a hat, So this is very interesting, this hat, because I saw some photographs of Professor S.C. Tiwari, who was doing his fieldwork in among the Rajis. He was also having a khaki pant and a hat. Similarly, I have seen B.S. Guha as well in his fieldwork. He was also wearing a very interesting kind of hat. Now, I don't know what was the relationship between the khaki and the hat and the anthropologist, but I think now anthropologists are. But he was, of course, more of a Swadeshi, maybe as a director of Anthropology Survey of India. That might have been a tradition at that time that director of Survey of India might be wearing. Because I remember, seeing a photograph of anthropology department teachers in 1950s. All of them were having Oxford boots and white pant and white shirt. And, now we don't have that. But there was, I think, the uniform kind of a thing was mandatory at that time. This is just, just to make the whole discussion lighter. So in the end, I would like to say that I have really gained a lot from Professor Mishra's lecture. Professor Mishra's lecture again reminded us of the need to pay attention to Indian scholarship, Indian anthropology scholarship, rather than running after the British and American. There is a lot that is there in India. There is a lot that is now anthropology. Of course, anthropology as a subject has crossed 1 century, and in this 1 century, so many people have done so much of work. I think that work needs to be read properly in the context, and from there, I think we should try to develop. I remember one Ghosh is there. I think Abhijit Guha is talking about him. He wrote something called Hindu anthropology. Now, Hindu anthropology, you may agree with not, but at least try to see what ideas he had. I remember D.N. Majumdar. He discussed at one point the concept of MARC. Now, MARC, like the Vastu and Kriya concept that he has given, MARC again is an indigenous concept. We should try to read about Indian anthropologists. Ananta Krishna Iyer is there, and Ayappan is there. So much of people have written so many things. And I think the time has come when we should try to take a stock of and move ahead, especially if what they have tried to talk about India, Indian civilization, Indian culture, Indian caste system, Indian tribe system, from their own perspective, from indigenous perspective. I think there is a need to develop that also, and I think this is very amply advocated by people like N.K Bose, people like Surajit Sinha, and others. So many others have, of course, P.K. Bhomik is there in that sense. So therefore, I think it is important, and I think this lecture has come at a time when we are rethinking about our Indian anthropology, directions of Indian anthropology, or colonial influence on anthropology. And I think N.K Bose is somebody who is very important landmark as far as this particular idea is concerned. And it's a very valuable document that has emerged out of this 14th N.K Bose Memorial Lecture. So with these words, I thank all of you for patiently listening to him and to me. Thank you so much.
This platform not only provides an opportunity to many eminent and distinguished scholars, like we had Professor P.C. Joshi in our last previous lectures, and as we have heard today from Professor K.K. Misra, who testify time and again to the timeless relevance of N.K Bose's contribution, but also affords many like us the privilege of listening to and understanding N.K Bose's immeasurable work. I sincerely thank all our IGNCA colleagues, special invitees, guests, and students for joining us today. We appreciate you taking the time to attend this lecture. Our sincere gratitude to the Media Center for their assistance with all logistical arrangement. Lastly, but not the least, to Professor K. Anil Kumar and his team, I express my sincere appreciation for your efforts in making this lecture a special and meaningful event. Thank you so much for joining us.